In this video, I'm going to teach you 3 things, and if you master them, you will be able to write a brilliant story for any exam board. Just 3 things. So the question that I'm going to teach you from will fit any exam board when we look at the stories that it will get you to produce. Imagine it's this, okay? You're writing an imaginative piece, could be a story, could be description, in which you have to start with these words. This is my moment. You won't have that question if you're doing AQA, but you can still start with those words, whatever the question. Okay, our number 1 technique is write about yourself. I've started this as number 1 for 2 reasons. 1, it is the easiest thing to write about because you know yourself better than anyone else in the universe. However, although you definitely have this fantastic self-knowledge, you're also a teenager, and one of the things that happens to us when we're teenagers is we are most reluctant to expose ourselves. So I'm going to try to get over that fear that you might have about writing about yourself. Now, the easiest way to get over that fear is to think about yourself when you were younger. So we have all become something different. So I've got a vivid memory of changing from a really fat kid who did no exercise to this kid who discovered rugby and then used their weight and bulk to destroy other people. God, I loved that. You will have had other experiences, but if you can't think of any, think of a time when you achieved something. Now, this doesn't have to be something that other people would go, wow, what an amazing achievement at. It's something that made a big difference to you. I had a best friend who was a genius, went to Oxford and ended up studying Latin and Greek. When I was young, we used to play chess and he beat me every time. One day, I beat him, and that was the day I quit chess. I said to myself, it's never going to get better than this. Or, and this is the most frequent thing in my young life, how I got something completely wrong. I like to approach things with humour, and looking back on my past mistakes is hugely entertaining and helps me get over the horror of what I did. So the one I'm going to tell you about, I was 5 years old, and next door to us was this overgrown garden, and in the middle of that garden was a brick and stone house covered in ivy and leaves, and the children my age fantasized that the old woman who lived in there was a witch who hated children. And we actually convinced ourselves this was true. So one day I decided to get my revenge on this vicious, vile and cruel witch. I crept into the garden and she had a huge tree with overhanging branches that created a kind of canopy, and so you could creep in as though it was a kind of den. No one could see what you were doing. Because no one could see what I was doing, I left her a secret symbol of my disgust and fearlessness. Yes, I dropped my trousers and went to the toilet under her tree. But that's not where it all went wrong. Where it all went wrong is when I went home and told my mother, I can still remember, how proud I was at my bravery, how thrilled I was at the symbol I had left behind for the wicked witch. And so I told my mother exactly what I had done. I expected her to gather me up in her arms, kiss me, congratulate me on being this awesome son, but no! She took me straight round to this woman's house, made me knock on the door and apologise, and believe it or not, I've never left such an offering anywhere since. But It's a story that now entertains me looking back, but at the time, I could not have been more humiliated. Well, you might not be convinced that writing about yourself is the way to go. So, what would you do? Well, you could go to people who have made a living in writing about magnificent moments. So, I can go to film, or book, or TV and pick my favourite. James Bond is a classic favourite film for me. And in every James Bond film, there's a moment when he's been captured by the supervillain and he faces certain death but manages to escape from it. And so I would pick my favourite moment from my favourite James Bond film and just rewrite it. All the visual stuff will come to me easily because it's in the images that are in the film. And then I just have to bring the emotional depth, which is my understanding of this character. You wouldn't pick James Bond, you'd pick a film that you really liked. It would be easy to do. Or I could pick a childhood favourite Disney film, which for me would be The Jungle Book, where Mowgli grows up in the jungle raised by wolves. There are loads of moments that I could pick there. My favourite is when he becomes the best friend of Baloo the bear and sits on the bear's belly as they float down the river. That would be an easy one for me to write about. Or you could pick a TV series where you've got a favourite character. I could easily pick Phoebe from Friends. And so I would pick an incident that sticks in my mind and I could easily write about it from that character's point of view. Or I could pick my favourite book, Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, and that's the story of a prisoner of war, 19-year-old American soldier who is taken prisoner in Dresden in Germany, and then one night the Allies bomb Dresden, turn it into a firestorm, and he comes out of his prison to find the city burnt to the ground. Doesn't sound much like a comedy, does it? But if you know the book, it will be so easy for you to write about that moment. So, picking something from the culture that is important to you will make it easy for you to A, find the moment you want to write about, and B, give it to the reader in the most amazing way. Why? Because that's what made it memorable to you in the first place. The third way to do it is to pick somebody you know well from the real world. The first one is a relative. In my case, it's going to be my parents, and they pulled off a casino robbery when I was 2 years old, which then led to them needing to flee the country with me and my sister in tow. I could also pick a historical figure who I know really well. There's probably someone you studied. For me, it's Shakespeare. There are moments all over his life which are transformative. I'm going to pick the death of his son, Hamlet, when he was 10 years old. And 1 year later, Shakespeare writes the most famous of all his plays, Hamlet. So if there's a historical figure who you know intimately, write about them. Or more likely, you know about someone in popular culture. Again, because I like comedy so much, I'm going to go for Elon Musk, because every week he does something else that looks or sounds insane. It will be easy for me to write about him and have fun doing it. Okay, whatever the mark scheme, whatever the exam board, the examiner is looking for just 3 things. Number 1, can you bring that moment to life? Even if the question isn't about that moment, you're always recreating a moment in your writing. Well, you can if there is something at stake. If the character is going to lose something or is going to gain something. Something has to be at stake. Go back through all my examples. Something was at stake in each one. Number 2, Can you bring that character to life? Well, if you're writing about a real person, such as yourself, or a relative, or one that you know intimately from your reading or film or TV or stuff, it's going to be easy for you to bring that character to life for the reader. You won't have to think hard to do it. It will come naturally to you because you know so much. And then there are all the writing descriptive skills which are marked in story writing. Can I see and hear and feel that moment? Well, obviously, if you're writing about a book or a film, that work's done for you. If you're writing about yourself, that work's done for you. If you're writing about someone you've looked up to or a relative, you've already thought intimately about that person, and so your imagination has already worked on that many times during your life. Those pictures and sounds and smells are there. Bam! They will come out on the page without any effort. Why is that important? Because this is an exam. You only get marked from what gets put on the page. Time spent planning is not time earning marks on the page. So these techniques I've shown you will allow you to engage in your writing with minimum planning, getting maximum marks for what's in here and is so easy to get out there on the page because you've done that thinking. Your next step is to go through each of the 3 scenarios I've given you, write down your ideas, and I guarantee, or your money back, that will fit any exam question that ever comes up. If you are feeling super lazy and you just want to steal a story that won't be plagiarism and can be adapted to any past exam question, that is the video coming up now, or just before.